ruled with scepter and seal. Kings who planted the cross where borders wavered and laws were young. In the long shadow of Rome's fading memory, a new Europe struggled to be born, a landscape of deep forests, unwritten maps, and fractured kingdoms where power was a flickering flame against the darkness. It was an age not of grand empires, but of fortified towns and fragile dynasties, where kingship wasn't simply inherited. It was proved through trial by ordeal, political cunning, or the brutal clarity of the sword. A king had to be a warrior, a judge, and a spiritual father, defending frontiers from Viking raiders or Magyar horsemen while building the churches that would anchor his communities. From Bohemia's misted hills to the gates of Seville, 5 rulers forged realms with parchment and promise, binding kingdoms to a faith they believed could outlast them, a faith that offered a vision of order in a world of chaos. Their reigns remind us that history is written not only in battles, but in the quiet shaping of culture, law, and conscience. Every choice, from founding a monastery to codifying a law, was an act of creation, a prayer for something larger than themselves, a kingdom built not just for their sons, but for God. In 10th century Bohemia, a land of ancient woods and warring tribes, a young duke, Wenceslaus, kept 2 blades tempered, justice and mercy. Raised by his devout grandmother, Saint Ludmilla, he stood for Christian values against the raw political intrigue of his own mother, the ambitious Drahomira, who clung to the old pagan ways, and powerful nobles who resented the new faith. Yet Wenceslaus held his course, assuming full power to strengthen the church, free prisoners, and bend a rough land toward peace. Legends tell of him rising at night to chop wood for widows and walking barefoot through the snow to attend Mass, his piety a quiet rebuke to the violence of his age. He forged a difficult peace with the formidable German king, Henry the Fowler, choosing stability over costly pride, a decision that further angered resentful nobles. His conflict with his pagan-leaning brother, Boleslav the Cruel, culminated in betrayal. Lured to a feast, Wenceslaus was his final words a plea for his brother's forgiveness. His vision triumphed, and he became Bohemia's eternal patron, the good king whose martyrdom secured the Christian soul of his nation, a shepherd remembered not for his throne but for his kindness. As Wenceslaus secured a Christian future in the heart of Europe, along the great river roads of the Rus, Vladimir of Kiev began as a seeker in a restless age, a fierce pagan warrior who erected statues to Perun, the god of thunder. He saw that the old gods were not enough to bind his sprawling, diverse realm into a single, enduring nation. The primary chronicle tells that Vladimir sent envoys to the great faiths of the world. They found Muslim services restrictive, saw no glory in the stateless faith of the Jews or the plain churches of German Christians. But in Constantinople's Hagia Sophia, beneath its celestial dome of gold mosaic, they reported back, "We knew not whether we were in heaven or on earth." It was a faith built for majesty. Seeking a powerful alliance, Vladimir agreed to help the Byzantine Emperor Basil II in exchange for the hand of his sister Anna, on the condition he become a Christian. Vladimir was baptized at Chersonesus, married into the heart of Eastern Christendom, and returned to Kiev with a new soul for his people. He commanded the pagan idols he once erected to be torn down and cast into the Dnieper River, and chronicles tell of his people entering those same waters by the thousands for baptism, the founding moment of their Christian identity. With pagan idols falling, new laws modeled on Byzantine learning rose, and churches and schools rippled outward like light on a river, transforming a land of merchants and warriors into a civilization of hymns and prayers. This transformation from a wandering people to a settled kingdom was mirrored on the plains of the Danube, where the Magyars, once feared horsemen whose raids terrorized Europe, were forged into a nation under Saint Stephen I. Born a pagan named Vag, he was baptized with his father, the chieftain Geza, and embraced the new faith with the zeal of a founder. After securing his rule by defeating a pagan rival, Stephen set out to transform his people, understanding that a nation needs a shared law and a shared faith. Crowned on Christmas Day in 1000 with a holy diadem from Rome, he solidified Hungary's place within Western Christendom, a declaration that it was a European kingdom under God, not a tribal confederation on the world's edge. Stephen's sanctity was the steady fire of institution. He divided the land into bishoprics and counties, built abbeys, and wrote profoundly Christian laws that commanded marriage for all but the clergy, protected the property of widows and orphans, and established tithes to support the church and the poor. By making it mandatory for every 10 towns to build a church, he wove faith into the very fabric of the land, turning riders into citizens, raids into roads, and the wild steppe into ordered villages. Centuries later, in an Iberian peninsula fractured into a patchwork of Christian realms locked in the long struggle of the Reconquista, Saint Ferdinand III of Castile inherited this legacy of kingdom building. Through shrewd diplomacy and a warrior spirit, he united the powerful kingdoms of Castile and Leon under a single crown, creating a Christian superpower in Spain. With his domain secured, he turned his gaze south to Al-Andalus, advancing not as a mere conqueror, but as a restorer. In 1236, he captured Córdoba, the former heart of the Caliphate, personally leading the procession to purify its grand mosque and consecrate it as a cathedral. A decade later, he achieved his greatest triumph, the surrender of Seville. To Ferdinand, victory was incomplete unless it secured a future for all who called the land home. He carried relics into cathedrals, but also promises of charters and peace. In a powerful symbol of restoration, he discovered the cathedral bells of Santiago de Compostela, looted centuries earlier and used as lamps in Cordoba's mosque, and ordered them carried back on the shoulders of Muslim captives. He saw his military campaigns not for personal glory, but as the work of God, praying, "Knowest that I do not seek my glory but thine," knitting Castile together into a fabric of trust strong enough to endure. This ideal of the monarch as a servant of God and his people reached its zenith in Paris, the intellectual heart of Europe, where Saint Louis IX ruled France with a discipline aimed first at himself through fasts, vigils, and alms. Raised by his formidable mother, Queen Blanche, who told him she would rather see him dead than commit a mortal sin, Louis internalized a profound sense of duty. His sanctity fused piety and policy as he reformed courts, rooted out corruption among his officials, and created a system of royal investigators to hear the complaints of the people, from peasants to strangers. He was famed for holding court directly under an oak tree in the woods of Vincennes, where any subject could approach him, making him not a distant royal but a fatherly figure who judged with even hands. A devout crusader, he led 2 campaigns to the Holy Land that, despite military failure and his own capture, earned the admiration of his enemies as he saw the trials as a way of sharing in Christ's suffering. He built a magnificent Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, a jewel box of stained glass, to house sacred relics including the crown of thorns, a testament to his belief that justice was not an ornament of kingship, but its very heart. In every reform, Louis asked not what would glorify his reign, but what would serve his people, ensuring his name would endure not as a conqueror, but as a model of a ruler who sought goodness above greatness. What crowns, in the end, do these kings wear? They are heavier than gold, more lasting than steel. Wenceslaus wears a crown of mercy, Vladimir, a crown of faith drawn from the waters of a river, Stephen, a crown of law forged from the chaos of the steppes, Ferdinand, a crown of unity pieced together from a broken land, and Louis, a crown of justice held in balance under a simple oak tree. Their power was not an end in itself, but a sacred trust for the protection of their people and the glory of God. Their crowns gleam not because they conquered, but because they knelt before a higher authority, understanding their earthly kingdoms were but a faint echo of a heavenly one. The true legacy of a crown is not the territory it claims, but the hearts it lifts and the lives it protects. A crown can command a frontier. Only character can command a century. These were not perfect men, but they were kings who looked beyond the battlefield, who struggled to build something that would last. They wrote borders, laws, and legends, but the measure of their reigns is simpler. Would their people call them good? History remembers them not as rulers of a moment, but as stewards of a legacy that still speaks today in the cathedrals of Prague and Kiev and the laws of Hungary and France. Their work endures, and their stories invite us to ask, what is the true purpose of power, if not to serve something greater than ourselves?
Please subscribe. centuries at Swords and Shadows.